Yes.
Hi everyone. My name is Ogiemonyi and I'm the editor-at-large of BellaNaija Style. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know that you could have been doing something else with your Saturday, but instead you're here with us. This event is actually our first digital summit, and we're very, very excited. It's called Mapping Africa's Fashion Future, and it's a whole day dedicated to the fashion industry, talking about fashion business and just, all things fashion basically. The panel today, our very first panel, which I'm actually super excited about because it's about fashion education. It's called Fashion Education, Future Proofing Your Fashion Business. And I'm hoping that, you'll enjoy this as much as I am. We currently have Pepper, who I think is here. Pepper, are you there? Hi,
Hello.
Pepper. We're
Hi.
waiting for Veronica. She's not here yet, but as soon as she is, she will join us, but we're gonna kick off right away. So hi Peppa, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Good
I can't
morning.
hear you. I think you're muted.
Hello. Oh, can you hear me? Hello.
Hi, I can hear you now. Hi.
Okay. Hi. Good
Right.
morning.
Good morning. It's super early here. How's it going?
Very well, thank you. Good to see you.
All right, it's been a really long time. So I mean we're still waiting for Veronica, but we're just gonna kind of go through ahead because I know you have a busy day ahead. First of all, the whole point of this panel, like why we decided to do it, is because I feel like on the continent especially, there's a lot of, talk about fashion education in terms of design, but not a lot of fashion education in sort of areas of the supply chain. So with, fashion business or like sometimes more technical aspects. I know that you do a lot of work in this area, so I'd like you to kind of introduce us. Hi, Veronica. Veronica has joined us. I'd like you to. Oh, hey, girl, you look good. I love your makeup. Hi. Good.
Ah,
Okay. Hi, Veronica.
okay.
Um, yeah. So I was just
My
introducing.
audio.
Pepper does a lot of work in sort of creative economies and just the entire fashion value chain. So I'm gonna give you the chance to kind of introduce yourselves.
I'm on the camera. It's going to show. Sorry, this is the joy of working from home and being a Saturday morning. So, hello everyone. My name is Joanna.
Connect another way.
I don't know if you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I should go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So, good morning. My name is Joanna Chikezie. Everyone knows me as Pepper, so feel free to refer to me as Pepper. That's absolutely fine. So, I founded the Assembly Hub, which is a platform and community where we support fashion and creative entrepreneurs. And we do a number of different things from training and capacity building. We run incubation programs. We do a lot of mentorship, and we also do recruitment. So we try to match young creatives, young graduates into employment opportunities within the creative sector. And just recently, we expanded an arm of our business into manufacturing. So that's the assembly in a nutshell. And I also do a lot of consulting work, especially around trade and branding. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much, Isoken and BellaNaija.
So Veronica, can you give us a little bit, just like a quick intro to who you are and what you do?
Yeah. Well, before I even say that, I want to say well done, Pepper. Amazing, amazing. You've come a long way. Great. I'm so excited for all of us. Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Veronica Odeka, and I'm the founder of Vane Style. It's a 360 boutique style agency. And the divisions of our brand is we have personal styling, which has a lot to do with personal shopping, image consulting for women and men, usually in positions of authority where they need a lot of guidance with their wardrobing. So we help them with that in that division. And then we have another part, which is our commercial styling. So we do a lot of creative directing there for fashion shows, for branding, anything that has to do with a company, speaking engagements, images on how people should dress in the workplace, what should be worn, how colors can affect your lifestyle, just all of that ground building from the inside outside. And then the newest part, which is a bit more public now, which I've done for the last 7 years, which is retail brand development. And so this all has to do with the fashion business aspect of building, how to become a fashion entrepreneur, a lot of the branding and the strategy, how to put together a collection, your range, how to edit, how to style it, and everything that brands need to actually scale up properly is what we've been doing for the last 7 years. It's been a bit more private, and recently within this year, we've gone a little bit more public. So that's pretty much what it is, and that's pretty much what Vane Style does.
Thank you so much. I mean, both of you are doing amazing things, and I love that you're kind of working in similar, streams, but attacking the problem in different ways. So my first question, why do you think fashion education is important? And this is obviously on the on the industry side. Veronica, you can go first.
Oh, okay. I think that, well, I know fashion education is important because we do not have the resources and there are fundamentals in building. A lot of times when I'm doing consulting with brands or designers and I ask them and I'll refer them to building a house, or I say, how did you start your brand? How did you begin? Even for brands that have been around for 5 years, 10 years, and you'll see that a lot of them have been gaping. There's no real structure as to how they've decided or they've gotten to where they are. There's no check and there's no balance. There is no real substantial growth. The numbers are there as far as, you're in business for this amount of time, but it's not there when you're looking at the actual figures and you're not really analyzing your data properly. I started to realize that they don't know how to look at the numbers. They don't know how to accurately dictate their data. They're not sure how to actually scale up their business. And so you realize that there's a huge gap that's missing, and yet they're still comparing themselves to international brands that have the funding, that have the resources, that have the education, that have the support, and not realizing that it takes a team and a village to actually build a brand. So the problem I started to realize is many of Nigerian designers are the ones that are doing everything. And I tell them it's like building a house. You have this great idea to build this house and you might kind of know what kind of house you want, but you alone cannot be the architect. You cannot be the site surveyor. You are not the person who's going to be the interior decorator. It just will not work. And when you begin to break it down for them to understand that you need the consultants, you need the buyers, you need the stylists, you need a team to kind of put this together, I started to realize that creativity is just one aspect of it, but the education on how to build the business and to scale up and to put yourself in a position to where your business is thriving because all these different aspects are working together, I started to realize that it's really important. And the brands are starting to realize, designers are starting to realize that it's really important, because you will have designers or people that consider themselves designers who are either copying trends and they are just churning it out and they're selling and they're making money. But eventually somebody's going to copy you because you don't have anything that's authentic and you don't have the proper foundation. Neither do you have the right structure in place to actually scale your business up. So it is vitally important, if we even want to begin to compete or see ourselves as peers on an international scale, you need that business aspect of it to be able to scale up in fashion. So it's very important.
100%. Papa, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I meet a lot of young entrepreneurs who are quite happy being self-taught, and that's fine. But just as Veronica said, we can't start talking about being a world-class country or world-class economy if we're all self-taught or we're all YouTubers. And there are just some things that fashion education will provide you. It provides you with a foundation and the fundamentals. Fashion is a business first and foremost. It shouldn't be something you did out of struggle, or it shouldn't be something that you do because, it's something that you're really passionate about. It has to be an understanding of the business and how does that engine work as a business. And fashion education provides you with that fundamental knowledge to know, where do I sit in the value chain and where can I maximize my opportunities in this particular aspect that I want to focus on. And it even goes in with things like technique and the actual craft of fashion design. It's not something that you can really, there are definitely people who have succeeded as self-taught designers and entrepreneurs, and there is nothing wrong with that. But now, even if you look at the way the world is now, we're moving very, very quickly into technology. And now we're seeing how fashion can even save the world. If you look at health and you look at the pandemic and how people are now producing with health in mind, with comfort in mind, and you can't get this from YouTube or just learning things on Instagram. You have to have a level of education to help you specialize, to help you focus, and to make sure that you know that this is my craft and this is the reason why I'm doing this. And so yeah, for me, it's very important, even now more than ever. If it was never important before, it's certainly important now.
I agree with all your points. The only thing that I will add is I do believe that because of technology, sometimes the technical aspects of, you know, actual design aren't as imperative as they were like 10 years ago, right? But think about it, just with Veronica's point about, having people who do, the consultant and the stylist, everyone has a job, and we're becoming more and more like nicheified, and we're becoming more and more specialized. And I think because of that, if you can find people who can translate your ideas and can translate your aesthetic, you don't necessarily need you don't have to be the person who does it. And I mean, I think it's a good thing because especially in Nigeria or in economies like Nigeria where you have to know enough to correct the people who work for you. It's a good skill to have, but I don't think it is it's enough for them, because sometimes what happens is when you tell that to like a young designer, you then focus on, I have to go out and acquire these skills. And at the end of the day, because you feel like fashion is a business, what happens is that's a little bit redundant in terms of what we need to do in this way. But I'm gonna move to my next.
I don't know if it's me, but you're cutting out. Is it my connection or?
It might be.
I'm,
a little bit. Yeah, I can hear. I mean, you were cutting out a little bit, but I still got the grasp of what you're saying. It is, so I wanted to just say that it's okay. You're actually right. And I think what we're trying to say altogether is that it's a business, as in you just have to know that it's a business. So one of the things I always tell designers, I'm like, you don't need to take on the stress of running everything yourself. You need to know that you need the help, and you can put together an external team. So your consultant doesn't have to live in the same city with you, doesn't have to be underneath your roof. Even your tailors, when you outsource, like Pepper rightfully said, they're handling manufacturing. So it's to say, okay, you know what, I'm putting together this virtual global team, but everyone doesn't have to be in the same place. And I think that that's the misconception. When you talk to these designers, they think that, oh, I need to hire this person, I need to hire this person, they need to work for me. No. What I tell them is, if you have one person working for you, go over the skill sets of what you need. See if somebody can multitask too. You might have an assistant who's really good at managing social media. You could double that up. You might have somebody who is a tailor who's really good and has learned textile. You could put them as the head seamstress or something. So you can double up. And then the positions where you don't need, you can definitely outsource. So we're all still a team. And like Pepper said, technology is driving us. So utilize that technology. But the problem is the ignorance of not knowing that the world is moving and you actually have to put together a team. So that's the ignorance that most people
I also think that I will cut like a lot of designers back in that Nigeria has its own very specific way of like trying a dream.
Yes.
It's like, you get caught up with the urgent versus the important, and it can get problematic in terms of like, oh, what do I need to do? I think the most important thing is to sit down and have like a long-term strategy, a medium-term strategy, a short-term strategy. So this is how I'm going to execute. So Pepper, I know that with all this work that you do, I know that you mentioned the manufacturing now, but you have a platform called A Careers. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I'm interested in the fact that you also kind of teach people and then create the pipeline for them to actually get jobs. So can you just tell us a little bit about
yes, of course. So it was quite interesting because we never set out to become an agency, an employment agency, if you will. But I think people started to gravitate towards us because we started to build a community of creatives. So whenever somebody was looking for a graphic designer, or I'm looking for a tailor, or I'm looking for a pattern maker, an illustrator, the list goes on, they would always contact us, and we would, quite happily say, yes, we know this amazing illustrator, we have this really cool social media content creator, and we were always referring people. But then it got to a point where we realized that actually, in order for us to be sustainable, we can actually convert this as part of our business model and actually charge for the service. So what we found was that we were training people in various aspects, different things, whether it was marketing, branding, illustration, and we found that we were actually vetting people without even knowing it. So people, companies and brands started to feel a little bit more safe and like, okay, I can trust Assembly because these people have done trainings with them, we've mentored them, we kind of understand like their ambitions and where they want to go. And so it was easy for us to match people with certain types of clients. So we have now like a standalone arm where it's called Careers. And so you can either come to us and just say, I'm looking for a particular type of work. I'm in school and I want to, build my fashion experience. So can you help me get an internship? We do things like that. Or we can work with an individual and they can say, look, I'm trying to build a team. I'm looking for an embroidery machinist, or I'm looking for a business developer, but somebody who has some kind of like interest in fashion. And so we were able to then match people according to those types of requests. So I guess for us, it's something that we found that we do a lot of advisory because, as you said, Veronica, many entrepreneurs are used to doing everything themselves. And so you find that they are forever thinking that they need to be on top of everything and in control of everything. And, and then what happens then is that we try to say, no, actually, you're looking for a business developer. You're not looking for, you can't have like 10 things in one person. Do you understand? And I think that when you're a startup, sorry?
Longest job description in the world with like 35.
Yeah. So we do a lot of, having to, well, my team, they do a lot of like revising job descriptions and saying, look, you're not going to get who you want with this type of job description. So we find that we're doing a lot of advisory for a lot of startups in fashion. And it's been a very interesting time and we've learned a lot. We've had so many funny stories. But all in all, the aim is to really provide access. So if you are in fashion, you should be able to get an internship. You should be able to work and achieve your dreams. Maybe one day being, that designer, or one day, you just love drawing and designing and coming up with concepts. But because you don't have the education, you think that you have to be an entrepreneur. But really, you would thrive in a great environment where you are just being, an illustrator. But oftentimes people think that in order for me to be in fashion, I have to be a fashion designer and have a fashion brand. But no, you love the sound of machines. So you would be fantastic as a project manager or production manager or an operations manager. So we do a lot of that in our work. So yeah.
I do agree that there are tons of people who are like, oh, I have to be a designer when really you would actually, because I think that like an entrepreneurial mindset, I mean, I don't believe like, oh, entrepreneurs are born or whatever, but I do think that you have to have a certain appetite for risk and to be able to have some comfortability as well. Because let's be honest, if you are like, can't fulfill your basic needs, it's very difficult to now go out in the world boldly and be an entrepreneur. So I think that some people will kind of benefit from structure, but because there's not that much information out there onto like how to do that and how to go about it and even what your expectations are, I think that's very, very important. And full disclosure, I have worked with people before who has helped me find people. So.
Yeah, and thank you to Veronica. She sent a lot of really good clients our way. So
I'm telling you, when I found out what Pepper was doing, I mean, obviously I followed her and we've worked together on so many different projects. It's in different capacities, but I was elated because I was like, finally, interestingly enough, there are quite a few of us that started out 10 years ago, 12 years ago as stylists. And we've all just blossomed into completely different directions, you know, no one's still struggling to be like, oh, I want to be a stylist, I want to be a stylist. But I feel like that's what comes with knowing your ability and knowing how to scale up and to kind of just really develop your talent. And I couldn't do what she did. I'd probably fire half of the people and be irritated at the fact that I have to vet people and train them and they're not listening because my patience level is a bit shorter than Pepper, but she's also really able to just nurture them and that training aspect. So you can even have, as a stylist, send your team to her to train. They come in, they train your staff, and just knowing that as somebody involved in fashion, and I tell designers all the time, go to the assembly. They will find someone for you in this fashion spectrum, because I've worked with people that do placements, but they don't understand. I'm looking for something really specific in fashion, and Pepper them are able to give, assembly is able to give that to you, and they will train them. So I think that's so important. It just knocks off half of the problems that I have as a stylist to get the right people for my team. So that's really, really good. Yeah.
Finding good people is hard. Finding good people who have the right attitude and then have the right skills there is almost impossible. So it's very, very important for them. So Veronica, we talked about educating brands, you talked about your work in terms of working with designers. But there's another aspect that we don't necessarily kind of, I guess, think of as education, consumer education. I think a lot of that is oriented into personal data.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Which is what? I'm sorry, I couldn't catch that.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. It was going in and out. Sorry.
So I said you do a lot of work on another side, which is consumer education. I feel like what you do with that kind of girl, you know, you little wear Nigerian stories, telling them about listening, wearing Nigerian is great, it's good quality, showing them the brands that are great quality. I think that it's important, and it's even more important on the buy side because people don't get it. And I mean, we started like a decade ago, and we remember it's still very like fresh in our minds when it was like, oh no, buy Nigerian, you know, it's not good enough. It's like from London, all that kind of stuff, right? So I think we've come a long way from then, but there's still some resistance. So how do you think we can educate consumers at scale? What can we do? Because I know obviously now there's Lagos Fashion Week, there are a lot of platforms that are doing different types of work in the value chain, but I still feel like we still face that resistance. Because for example, I'm in Canada, and there are people who, you know, I mean, there are more and more Nigerians here every day. More and more Nigerians here every day, but in the US and Canada, there's still like African fashion, if it's not Ankara, they don't really get it.
Yeah.
How can we educate consumers at scale? Because especially for export, getting designers to sell in dollars and pounds, to sell in, you know, yen or whatever is extreme. Like you can't build a global business without it, right? You can't, like fulfilling the need in the domestic market is great, but to really, really scale, you need to be able to reach a global consumer. But to reach a global consumer, they need to understand, you know, what it is you're doing. So how do you think that we can educate the consumer at scale? So basically take what you're doing now and make it bigger, reach more people. Even if it's just
you're definitely right. We, you know, gosh, I could talk about this for an hour, but let me just kind of scale it down really quickly. You're definitely right. We cannot build you cannot presume to build a global brand without, first of all, starting where you are. And yes, while everyone has their aspects in what they're doing, which is great, taking Nigerian brands from here and moving them globally or giving them an audience. And like you rightfully said, we have all these fashion weeks and things like that. I know firsthand from working with consumers, because as a stylist and dealing with the consumers in their wardrobe, styling them, at first 10 years ago, when I would have clients and I would, during summer, when they're going for summer, we don't pack anything from here. What I'm creating is a list of them for them to be able to buy brands when they travel abroad. In the last 5 years, I have seen that turn over. Now when my clients are traveling, we are literally sourcing 100%, I mean 100% of their wardrobe comes from Nigerian brands. And so my thing, it was really important to say that the light needs to shine on Nigerian brands. So it's twofold. One hand, people you have to educate them that you should buy Nigerian brands. Nigerian brands and Nigerian designers are good because they faced with the problem to say the quality is not great, the finishing is horrible, which of course has been the case. And then you have the designers on one hand who are saying, well, people are buying my stuff, so I don't really think the need, I have to, my quality has to be that great. They're buying it as it is. So how do you educate the consumer is by, first of all, telling them, showing them, putting it on the platform to say that Nigeria is more than just Ankara. So which is why when I have the home shopping from V is to say, look, as an audience, this is coming from Nigeria and it doesn't always have to be Ankara. So you have different types of consumers. You have the Nigerian woman or the Nigerian consumer, you have the African buyer, the African consumer, and then you have the international, the global consumer, which might be the Nigerian in the diaspora, or it might be someone else who likes the culture. And so it all has to do with the aesthetic of the designer. But even at that, example, I had a lady send me a long email DM on Instagram the other day, and she was like, well, I've been following you. You keep telling me buy Nigerian brands, and I bought from some people, and I recently bought from this Nigerian designer, and she said, and it's a very known designer, and the pieces came and they were absolutely horrible. He charged me 50K, the quality was horrible, and she just ripped him to shreds. And she said, so I think that you really need to do something about the designers and they need to, and I told her, I said, no, I don't need to speak to the designers. The problem is the consumer. When you continue to buy from a designer whose quality is not up to par and they are continually selling, and you're continually consuming, then they're gonna feel like everything is fine. They're never gonna see there's a problem. If you give yourself a grade to say, I'm only gonna buy if it's, so the value, and I come up with this whole thing that says the value, which has to do with the fabric that they're using, the texture of the fabric, the quality, which is the finishing and the product, and then the price point. When you add all those three things together, a consumer is going to see value. So I have a perception of a brand, and then I get it, and all of these things add up to give me value. So I'm satisfied, and I'm going to continually purchasing from this brand, which is why I said to her, I said, look, as a consumer, as you've received it now, I don't need you to bash the designer. What you need to tell him is, look, as a consumer, this is what I consist to be of value. And you fail to deliver value to me based on this. Price point might be fine, but your fabric is not up to par and your finishing is actually poor. If you worked on this, I would then consider buying it from you again in its value. If the designer or the brand got a lot of feedback as far as that was concerned, they would actually work on making sure that they're coming up to par with everyone else, which is on one hand. And so as somebody who's worked with consumers and also somebody who's working with brands and designers to help them develop, I tell them, you have to have all these things in order to be able to sell accordingly. And so just like Pepper does with her platform of saying, you know, we're training, and I know that if I come to her, I'm going to get value. I will not work with a designer or a brand. I will never put them on my platform if I don't feel that you're giving value for money, which is all of these things. If your fabric isn't up to point, if your finishing is not there. And so when people look at the things that I post on social media, they know if I'm buying something that Veronica is recommending, she definitely, I would not sell you something that I wouldn't wear, or I wouldn't recommend something that I wouldn't buy into as well. So I think that the education comes on both hands, telling the consumers what to look for, because they'll just say, well, I don't like it, it's not good, it's too, you're charging me too much money. And the designer and the brand, they don't understand. They're like, hey, but people are buying it. So they don't understand that it's the finishing or it's this or the other. And on the other hand, I do feel that Nigerian designers are getting there. We have a lot of Nigerian designers that are doing the best that they can, and they're giving you that value as a whole. So it's just to continually put it out there and have their audience continually share and change the perception of what people think should be Nigerian brands. It should only be Ankara. Most people are beginning to see that it's not. And actually they're probably drawn to things that are similar. So it's not just the Ankara, it might be the geometric prints. It might be the fact that the colors are bright shades. That is more what they're drawn to. So when I do a lot of posts and I'm saying, okay, what do you like about this outfit? Would you buy it for this amount of money? All you're doing is you're looking at the data and your audience is there and you're collecting that data of information and we're feeding it back to the designers and also sharing it with the consumer. So everyone kind of has a good understanding of what I should expect, how else I should purchase, what I should make, how to give my consumer value. And so it works hand in hand, both folds.
That makes a lot of sense. Papi, do you have to add?
No, I think Veronica said it all perfectly.
What is your best advice for emerging brands and creatives that are trying to stand out in a crowded market? So Veronica, for you, that would be more individual brands, and Pepper, for you, it would be more sort of creatives who are trying to get work, who have maybe, for example, trained with the assembly and are trying to get, on the ladder, the employment ladder.
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, Oh, there's so many things because honestly speaking, where do I start? We unfortunately, even the fundamental basics of CV writing, cover letter writing is a car crash at the moment. It's a really sad story. Um, and you expect that, okay, people know how to write a CV because you're online and there's so much resources, but honestly there's just there's a really big gap there. So first and foremost, if you are looking for to work with a fashion brand or any type of startup now, because I find that you can be a creative and you can work in tech, because you find that a lot of tech startups, they need creative thinkers, they need creative writers, they need people that can look at problems in a different way. So you can also use your creative abilities and skills to work in multiple sectors. You need to really be able to identify, what have I done in the past 5 years that can make me stand out to a prospective employer? What am I good at? What are my skill sets? What am I passionate about? You could have been volunteering for an NGO and you think that's not relevant, but it actually is, because it shows consistency, dedication. There's some certain soft skills, patience, exactly. There's some things that team building, all of these things that make up a very good candidate. So it's not always about, I am amazing at design, but then I've got a terrible temper and I talk down at people's tailors. Honestly, these are not, there's a holistic view. So try to represent yourself as a human being who has these amazing qualities, that can work with people, that is open and willing to learn. At the same time, show the things that you've done. If you've done courses on Coursera or Skillshare or any of these platforms, you can also put it down there, because we know that definitely you don't have certain institutions here. So you can share all of those different courses and webinars that you've taken. I would also advise you to intern. I know intern seems like a dirty word in Nigeria, because the truth is we're trying to like survive, right? How much am I going to be paid? But if you can get yourself a paid internship, in fact, you should be getting paid as an intern. I don't believe in free internships. I try to, advocate for at least some sort of, cover your basics, no? So get yourself in the door and try to work with someone for 6 months to 1 year, even if you hate it, because the moment you've left, you'll be shocked how much you learn, and then you now become an asset to someone else. Most people will tend to hire someone who can show a background of, I've done work experience. I've worked with Veronica, I've worked in BellaNaija, I've worked with Sego. I was the pattern cutter, I was customer service. All of these things will make you an asset to the next person who is looking to
that, sort of job that you're applying for, just a history of any kind of work experience.
Yeah, definitely, because it just shows that you're disciplined. You wake up at 6 in the morning, face the traffic, and continue working somewhere. So it does show that. And also, if you are someone who is looking to position yourself as a professional, I typically look at Instagram and LinkedIn. Those are my two first points, because if you're telling me that you love fashion and you're passionate about fashion, or you're telling me that you are a brand expert, or you're a digital marketer, or you're a storyteller, I want to see that on your social media platforms. I want to see you telling stories. I want to see your perspective. I want to see that, what, this girl or this guy has a unique perspective to this issue, and I want that as part of my team. So don't just see these social media platforms as, oh, I just dress up and I show how good I can dress, and that's what I'm going to. No, like, show me your point of view. Show me the things that inspire you. What is your unique perspective on the world and in fashion, or wherever your discipline is. Showcase your work, and also network as well, because the truth is that it's always about like a 3 degrees of separation. I have some clients who, if I don't know this person, won't hire. They only go with recommendations. Some companies are very, very strict in that sense. So try to network with the right people who can vouch for you, who can speak on your behalf. These are all of the things that can help you, bag that particular opportunity. So that's what I would say.
So Veronica, what about you?
Yeah, so from my point of view, when I'm working with designers or anybody who's starting a brand or a label, or even retail brand owners, because I've had to explain to, well, people when they're like, oh, I'm not a designer, I'm not a designer. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. You're not a designer. Zara, the owner of Zara is not a designer either, but you're still involved in fashion. So you're a retail brand owner, designer, somebody who's more on the creative and has actually physically gone to school. And you, funny enough, have more of a business aspect of how to kind of put a brand together. So if you have a retail store, or you, which is an own store, so you sell your own brand like Zara, or you have a multi-brand store, so like a Lara or Zincata, for instance, you know, you're still technically involved in fashion to one aspect. So what I always tell people is no matter what spectrum you are on, one thing is you definitely want to know your aesthetic for your brand. And I use the example of Selfridges and as opposed to Harrods. And I say, see, look, you don't have to just be a designer to have an aesthetic. Your aesthetic will be based on your details, your silhouettes, your fabrics, your texture, your technique, and also your silhouettes or shape. What is the aesthetic of Selfridges? Selfridges' aesthetic is to make sure that they have new brands. So if I was shopping in London, I would always go to Selfridges if it's a new brand. If it's a new brand I've never heard of before, they introduce you to new unknown brands. Harrods is more traditional, very heritage-like, old brands that you already know exist. So already, even at that, it's something you don't even subconsciously know. You're like, oh, I like to go to Selfridges. I don't even know why. It is because they have a strategy. That is the aesthetic of Selfridges. This is the aesthetic of Harrods. What is going to be your aesthetic? Even if you have a multi-brand store, even if you've decided you're going to have an own brand store, what is the aesthetic? You can't just say, oh, I'm going to just carry all these designers and put in there. You might say, you know what? I love the gift of travel and leisure. Your entire store and the audience of who you create for and who you're buying and who's going to buy into your brand should be focused on the aesthetic. And so I usually tell people that when I'm brands, designers, you have to have an aesthetic to begin with. And then second, you need to look for what is going to be your hero product. And you want to own the hero product. You never, the amount of times I say, I've made things and my clients are tired. I want to make a new, something new. And I say, you know what? Honestly speaking, people do not like change. We are creatures of habit. We actually like the same thing. We just want you to tweak it a little bit. So if you've developed I said, look, perfect example, Tory Burch. Everybody had those Tory Burch ballet flats. I mean, everyone had them, you know, and she created one particular one. And also that's the aesthetic and the silhouette. And all she kept doing was just changing the texture, the fabric. So you have the PVC, you have the snake skin, you have the classic. So it's still the same thing. And so what I tell new designers or anybody who's involved in fashion who has a brand or a label is you definitely want to establish an aesthetic first with strategies that are going to definitely work for the aesthetic. You definitely want to break it up into your details. You want to break it into your textures, which are your fabrics, and then also your silhouette. And you want to make sure your range, which is where 90% of Nigerian designers and brands fail, is the range. When you don't have consumers that are consistently buying from you, you've actually not developed your range strong enough. And so when you get stores that say, oh, I'm selling, but people are not buying, you go and I say, okay, if you put together a collection, and they'll put first 50 pieces and then maybe 75% of the pieces are all dresses. Well, you don't have a range. Do I go to Selfridges and just see only dresses? No. You have to have everything that's going to cater to this audience that they want to buy from you. You need to be more consistent as well with your, probably like maybe your drops, for instance, like Zara does. It's interesting when people say, oh, I want to be fast fashion like Zara. And I say that, do you know that even Zara has a strategy and a technique? What is their selling point? Trends. They've decided that, you know what, we are going to be the best when it comes to for everyone. So even at that, there's a strategy. So even for someone who's like, oh, I'm not a designer, I didn't go to school, that's fine. You still have a brand and your brand should still have a strategy, which means you still have an aesthetic that is strong. There has to be a unique selling point. Just like Pepper said, if you're, even as a person, you have a unique selling point of what it is that you're all about. As a brand, as a designer, as a retail owner, as a multi-brand, you still have to have a unique selling point, which is going to speak to an 80% of an audience that you want. So you always have 80% that you're speaking to, and 20% that's your non-customer, who is always watching and possibly can become your non-customer. So usually people are not interested in so much of change, but they want the change to be gradual in what it is that you're making, but the aesthetic has to be consistent and has to always be there. So I would definitely advise brands that are already, who are looking to, and begin to redevelop your aesthetic, which comes into your DNA, which comes from finding who your ideal consumer is, and then begin to gradually build from that.
Yeah. It's definitely
If I may just add to what Veronica said, with Selfridges, they also spend a lot of money in the visual merchandising. So their shop windows, Selfridges, their shop windows are always changing. They take a lot of time into that. And it's surprising for me that I see stores even in Lagos and there's just absolutely no thought that goes into their window displays. So that's their thing, their window displays. And also it also translates into your digital experience as well. So people just think that, okay, I have my store and I'm going to make it amazing, but then your website is cranky and the Instagram is, all over the place. So it also think about it across all your platforms as well.
I mean, I read once that you have to think of your brand as a universe, as its own universe, right? So all the brand touch points have to have a certain feel and it has to be uniform in that way. And then you also have to think about how the experience translates from your Instagram to your website to your physical store if you have one, to your customer service experience, your packaging. When you think about it like that, it makes sense. If I'm fun poppy brand and I'm like, I'm focusing on a young audience, there's a certain way I'll speak to the audience, as opposed to if I'm speaking to a much older audience, it's more conservative, needs less of the bells and whistles, and it's more about high touch customer service. So we have only a few minutes left. Thank you guys for staying this long. We have a few questions. Somebody's asking Pepper, how can I be part of the assembly? And Abiodun Adegboye, thank you for telling me my mic isn't loud enough. He's asking, Veronica, if you're starting up, how do you manage the team thing? Or you just be the designer, tailor, media consultant a lot? I don't understand the question. Okay, wait. So if you're starting up, how do you manage the team thing? I'm assuming this is if you are trying to kind of get out of being a solopreneur and you just, how do you manage it that way?
Okay, so if you're just starting off as a brand, is he saying that he has a team together or not? So if you're starting off, I mentioned that you could just work with so the first thing would be to look at your skill set. Find out what it is that you're really good at as a designer. It might just be the creation, it might be the sourcing, and then you look at the people that you have and see who else has an additional skill that they could add value to. And then you kind of build from there. So I think that first of all, listing down what it is, after you found out what your brand is all about, it's more about external teamwork. I have a young designer that I'm working with, and she's in Port Harcourt, and there are just 3 of them. She has her 2 tailors and herself, and I think she had hired, and then so me, I'm now an external team member because I'm going to be part of her team. She has someone else who's building her strategy, and even the people that handle her manufacturing as well. It's all teamwork, but just making sure that you're outsourcing it, so you're not taking on so much responsibility within yourself. I think that that's what he's asking. I'm not quite sure of the question, but yeah.
You can let us.
I think Pepper is.
Pepper, are you there?
Oh, yes, I am. I think, so for whoever wants to join the assembly, it's really straightforward. Our website is www.theassemblyhub.com, and we have links that can take you to signing up to our newsletter. So we're pretty open in terms of, if you just want to access resources, or you just want to know when our next training is happening, or you're looking for a particular job opportunity, everything is all on our website. And then you can get links to our social media handles from there.
Okay, we literally have 1 minute left. So thank you so much, guys. Thank you for joining us, Veronica, Papa. You're amazing as usual. And thank you for everyone who showed up. And our next panel is starting in about 10 minutes. So the link is on our Instagram. Mary's meant to drop it in the chat, but you guys can hang out for a bit. We'll drop the link, and next panel is called Putting the Press. It's about PR and getting into media and getting the brand out there. So you should stick around for that. Thank you so much again. Thank you, Pepper. Thank you, Veronica. Bye.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you, Veronica.
Yes, you too, Dorothy.
Bye again. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.